Welcome to Beyond the Reformer, the podcast where those who love Pilates come together for thoughtful conversations, genuine insights, and inspiring stories. I'm your host, Nic Lenny, and through these chats, I hope you feel more connected to our community, more aligned in your purpose, and inspired both in your Pilates journey and beyond. In this episode, I'm joined by Rachael Hall, former Royal Ballet dancer, Pilates and Franklin Method educator, and the founder of Aligned. We talk about her journey from the stage to the studio, building a wellness-led online platform, and redefining how we connect to our bodies. Let's dive in. Rachael, it is fantastic that you are here. We have planned this a long time. It's taken us a while to get here.
I mean, so many years. I was thinking that on the way over. I mean, years ago, we had a coffee just below your studio and you said, I've got this idea. I mean, I don't know how many years ago. It's more than 6 years ago. I think it's, a long time.
And then we tried to do it in COVID and it just wasn't the right time. And anyway, here we are. When you keep coming back to the same idea, there's usually something in it. So finally, we are going with it. And even this, you were one of the first people I reached out to, and it's taken us a few weeks, and we'll talk about why life is so busy and it takes a few weeks to get there. You're a Pilates teacher, a Franklin Method educator. You've got your online platform Aligned and so much more. I'd love to go back to the start really and understand how you got into movement, because you're a real movement family, and I'd love to understand how you and your siblings are all in movement in some way. But what's your story? Where did movement start for you?
Movement started for me going to ballet class and, going to tap and modern and all of those things when I was really little. So I started dancing, kind of quote unquote, dancing when I was 2.5. That's when I first went to a ballet class, if you could call it that then, running around with your scarves, etc. And just really loved it. I mean, perhaps no more than anybody else, but, I loved it. Went every single week, had lots of lovely friends that were there. And then when I was 10, my ballet teacher took my mum to one side and said, I think Rachael should audition for the Royal Ballet School, which wasn't on our radar at all. And I did. And I went through the process with zero pressure on me, because I didn't really know what I was auditioning for. And then I got in and I just I suppose my life changed hugely overnight, kind of jumping into this portal of being in this professional training. So I think that's where it started really. It all started with dance, and then it morphed into a classical professional ballet training. And then, we can talk perhaps later about how that then morphed into understanding functional movement, coming back from injury. But that's where it really started, I'd say. For me, for my mum, who teaches Pilates as well. My sister teaches yoga. Tom teaches Pilates and biomechanics and Franklin Method. He's got some moves, but he didn't ever go. He didn't ever go to dance class.
Did you discover Pilates, at the Royal Ballet?
Well, funnily enough, you could only go to a Pilates class at that point if you were injured. So when you were injured, that's how you would rehab, which was a bit of a shame, because actually I think it's very different now, because, what we understand now is that it's so important to stop you from being injured and to understand your body and to be strong and toned and flexible in all the ways. But I suppose I did a little bit, but it wasn't something I was doing regularly. I discovered Pilates through injury when I was 19. I was in a ballet company in Germany. And just before I went on for a show that evening, I tore all of the ligaments, the lateral ligaments, my ankle, and then had reconstructive surgery on my ankle. But that's how I got into Pilates. Had never really done much of it before, but my mum, bless her heart, she was like, right, what do we need to do? She got in touch with Lynn Robinson in London, and I started going to her studio 6 days a week. So that was my journey to Pilates, and then jumped straight into that world with Lynn.
And you've touched upon it a little bit. What was the world of dance back then? What was it like, that world of going in terms of the approach to your body? Does it feel different now?
I think it's really different now. I mean, I didn't know where my hip joint was. I didn't know what my body looked like on the inside. I just knew on the outside I needed to look like this. I needed to jump this high, turn this amount of times, get my leg as high as the person next to me, turn out as much as possible. So I knew the shapes that I had to make, but I didn't know what was going on inside my body. And so if I had a different mind now going back, I think it would be so different. Well, I know it would be so different. I would have been injured less. I would have danced with much less pain. And I think I just would have had much more range, being able to really support my body's biomechanics instead of just kind of ramming my leg up or, not listening. I didn't listen to my body.
Was Pilates your sort of first teaching route as such outside of ballet? What was the moment where you thought, maybe I'll train as a teacher? Did you always think you were going to be a teacher, or did you do it for yourself?
Oh, I never thought I would be a teacher of anything, which is hysterical because that's actually what I have done for actually most of my career. And I adore it. I couldn't love it more. But I never thought I would be a teacher. Yes, so Pilates was the first route of teaching. When I was doing classes 6 days a week at Lynn's Body Control Studio in London, back when I was 19, it just felt like a natural progression to do their teacher training. Lisa Bradshaw, I think, said to me, Rachel, I think you should do the teacher training. We'd love to have you. And I just suddenly thought, well, first of all, I was like, I don't know. I mean, it's a big change from being a dancer, but it was such a beautiful change because it was the first time in my life that I felt, I mean, I was only so young, but I think I started everything really young. You know what I mean? Yeah. So by the time I was 20 and I was trained, or 21, I think, when I trained, it was the first time in my life where I felt like I was more in control and I could direct my path. I wasn't always waiting for someone to notice me or give me a contract or, tell me I was worth anything. This was the first time I was like, oh, I can create a schedule of my own and I can travel wherever I want with it. And, this is my life now. So yeah, Pilates was the first route to teaching.
You did your training then with Body Control. At this point, are you still dancing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was trying to dance. So I'd come away from my contract in Germany. I'd moved back to London. I got a job in a gym working on reception and I was teaching. I did the New York City Ballet workout teacher training. So I was teaching that at the gym as well, alongside doing my Pilates teacher training. And then I was auditioning and, trying to get work and it just wasn't happening. I'd get bits and pieces, short contracts, but a long contract just wasn't landing. I think my life was trying to point me in a different direction, which is, it's hard, isn't it? It's not an easy thing for me to let go of things. I often kind of stay a little bit too long. So yeah, my life was trying to point me in a different direction. Then Pilates just popped up. And actually, it's been such a beautiful path because I've been teaching for 23 or 24 years and it's been such a constant through my life, even though there's been other threads of other beautiful insights that have come in. It's quite moving, isn't it, to look back and you think, gosh, this has been most of my life I've been a Pilates teacher.
For sure. When you started to learn Pilates, I imagine there's a lot you carried over from, all that movement dance training you'd had, but were there also things you had to really unlearn?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I could make everything look good from the outside because, aesthetically, I'm like, oh yeah, I know what this is supposed to look like. So I remember it was the first time where I started to drop in and think, oh, I'm actually feeling my body differently. So it was an unlearning. And then I think even more so when I did Franklin method, that was the biggest unlearning. It is a remembering in a way, isn't it? I had to unpick what I'd learned as a classical ballet dancer. And then even what I'd learned, on those early teacher trainings, I taught very differently when I first taught, much more regimented, much more kind of classical ballet-esque. And then when I came back from each training that I did over the years, it's like, gosh, how am I going to integrate this? I've been telling people to do this for years. How am I going to tell them to suddenly not pull their navel into their spine and lift their pelvic floor?
If you've been teaching like we have a long time, like we've all been on that journey where we've understood more. And it's important that you don't keep hanging on to stuff, go along with, be open to asking why did we say that? And maybe why isn't that so helpful? You mentioned the Franklin method. When did that come into your life? Because I feel like that's what I know you for. You've come to my studio and run workshops with my clients. When did you discover the Franklin method and how did you kind of get into that?
So I discovered the Franklin method when I was in Australia. I was teaching in Australia. So when I first trained as a teacher, I moved to North Devon, which is where I live now, and I did an apprenticeship for 2 years with a great teacher, Lou Banfield. Then I went out to Australia to work with another teacher that had trained me, Bruce Hildebrand, who's a great friend of mine. And he taught me with Lisa Bradshaw and Megan Steers in Lynn's studio in London. And I went to cover him while he was doing his Franklin method teacher training. So I was in Melbourne and he was flying back to Switzerland to do his Franklin method. And he would come back and he'd be practicing all of the material on me. And it was the first time I had felt like that in my body. I hadn't understood what my pelvis looked like. I didn't know what my hip joints were. And then just suddenly these tiny little movements, much more embodied with the imagery, it was like a real deep remembering. And I think that was probably the first time that I really noticed what it felt like when my nervous system felt comfortable and calm. I suppose that was when I met the Franklin method. So it was in Australia.
I think it's people have heard the name. Could you explain a little bit more about what the Franklin method is? I mean, you've kind of touched upon it in your own experience, but how do you explain it to people who ask you?
Well, I always struggle in a way, actually, because it's a lot of things. But if I
That's
were
why I'm
to
asking you to describe it, not me.
if I were to try to condense it, it's really embodied anatomy, embodied biomechanics. So first and foremost, it's understanding your body, understanding you. This is my clavicle, this is my shoulder girdle, these are my hip joints, and this is how they are designed to move. And obviously we're all different, but there is a blueprint to, how we're designed to move as humans. So it's really being able to see, oh, this is the truth of my body. So when I lift my arm up, this is how my scapula moves. This is how my clavicle moves. So if I'm going in the opposite direction to that, if I'm trying to keep my shoulder down, my brain and my body are going to be saying no. So I'm moving with the brakes on. So that's what the Franklin method is. It's understanding your biomechanics, your anatomy, and then really being able to support it with imagery. So whether that's anatomical imagery, positive self-talk, metaphorical imagery. Yeah, actually, that wasn't a bad description.
That was a very good description. And of course, it links into Pilates so well. I mean, we do some Franklin, we make our students on my training course read the book. It comes in, to all movement teaching, doesn't it? My understanding is that Eric Franklin, which is so great because Eric Franklin's still around, and that's not, you don't get that very often, do you get to work with these amazing people directly? But it was his experience through dance that kind of brought this work out, in that he started to realize maybe how some of this cueing that was being said wasn't anatomically correct. And so you get that fight against yourself. And I think we see that it's a conversation that comes up in my Pilates teacher training a lot, like shoulders back and down. Well, you lift your arms up, your shoulder blade goes up. It's just trying to get people, like you said, to really understand the anatomy, and then how do we bring it to life so people can embody the natural patterns of their body. And did you, when you started to discover that, I imagine, because I think some of the examples I give are in the dance world where, maybe how a plie, I'm not a ballerina, you will know this better than me, but how a plie is taught, it's a squat. And yet there's a lot of cueing that was around like tuck together, when actually, the pelvis widens and opens. Is that kind of why, when you started to discover this way of thinking and moving, like you felt so differently in your body?
Yeah, I definitely think it is that. I started to really see that we had been queuing. I mean, I had been queuing actually as well, but I'd definitely been queued for the whole of my dance training, from what it looked like on the outside, not what it looked like on the inside. And I started to realize, oh, if you get it right on the inside, it will probably look like that on the outside. So actually, if you can embody the bone rhythms of the pelvis, the sit bones widening, the sacrum nutating as you do a plie, it gives you actually the impression on the outside that the pelvis is just going down, but in fact there are these little minute bone rhythms that are going on inside, instead of just thinking tuck your tail underneath you and block everything. Yeah, so I think it was just real. And I suppose in a way it was alarm bells. I remember speaking to a couple of my friends that were in the Royal Ballet Company at the time. Like, oh my gosh, no wonder you've had a disc issue. No wonder you've had knee problems, because you're still tucking your pelvis when you're doing a plie. I had another one of my best friends come to stay with me before hip surgery. And she was like, oh my gosh, I've never embodied my hip joint before. I had no idea that this is how I'm supposed to load it. So yeah, I think that's why it was such a big light bulb moment for me, because it's very simple actually, isn't it? When you can just see and visualize the anatomy. Another thing, learning the anatomy through this embodied way, I've never forgotten it. I just feel it. I just remember it.
It changed the way you moved. Did it go deeper than that? Did it change the way you felt, maybe the way you lived, like energetically? Did you feel a shift in you?
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, in everything. And I think Franklin Method was just the beginning of that. It was kind of a key to open up my nervous system, to open up a portal. I went on to meet Laura Hames Franklin, who is Eric's late wife. She was a really dear friend of mine, and I did so much training with her over the years in something called Universal Health Principles. And she really brought all of the work to life for me. In the teacher trainings, there was a real it was such a learning. There's a lot to learn in all three levels. But with Laura, it was such an embodied practice of it. And she embodied the material in every minute of her life. So she was such a beautiful teacher. So yeah, it absolutely has. And I think it's opened up this world of energetics to me as well, really being able to sense not just my movement, but my mood, my hormones, how I feel around other people, the big yeses and the big nos. And I still feel that it's the tip of the iceberg. I still feel like there's so much more to come. But yes, it definitely was this opening of a portal.
It's so interesting, isn't it? How when we learn to slow down, to tune in, and through movement and through embodying movement, we get to know ourselves better and we get to feel ourselves. And, people talk about their gut feeling. You get to actually be able to really tune into it in a different way. And like you said, no yes from no's. I do want to do this. I don't want to do this. I like this. I don't like this. They sound really simple things, but I know for me, they were tricky too. And movement for me has also helped open that side of me up. Talk to me about the work you did with Laura then on universal health principles. What's that about?
Is probably another thing that's tricky to explain. So what I would want to share probably from universal health principles, it was again we would use Franklin method a lot. So that is how she would encourage us to be able to access that deeper dialogue with our own bodies. She worked a lot with a physicist, Nassim Haramein. So she would talk about the universal, what do they call it? The universal field theory or something. But basically it's just the energetics of how everything is connected. So how everything is connected in the body via the nervous system, via fascia, via all of it, actually how we are all interconnected with everything around us. So it just felt like she expanded the work that I'd done with embodying myself in the Franklin method. She helped to expand it to everything, really, to the universe. And another key part of it was almost like kinesiology, in that you would ask the body, what is the priority? What needs to be seen? And it was about upgrading your body. So you might be feeling neck and shoulder tension, but maybe it wasn't just that your traps were tight. Maybe you're really feeling a mental load, or you're really feeling this physical load. And she would just give us tools to help us to unpick all of that with our clients.
It's important, isn't it? I just ran a teacher training weekend, and it's the weekend where the lecture is on the energetics. Pilates studio is a business of energy, whether people know it or not. And you as a teacher, you might not know that you're bringing your stuff, even if you say nothing out of your mouth, like people can feel it, and vice versa. And the energy of the space that you create, how you do that, how you make sure that you don't burn out. And so I love to start getting people, even in their teacher training, to start seeing maybe the beginnings of this. And like you, I've kind of gone down this route. And I think people can see it, can't they? Like we've all had experiences where we shift something in ourselves and other things shift, not because we said anything or did anything with them. We don't have to have a conversation with them. And suddenly we feel better about something, or we make peace with something energetically. And then you see the person just also kind of change how they are. And that's kind of those principles, isn't it? And, when we're working with clients and they've got stuff going on with them and they're feeling maybe discomfort in their bodies, it's getting them to understand that it is deeper than just, like you said, let's rehab the shoulder. That actually it could be, and it nearly always is, chronic pain, especially emotional and energetics. And it's why I love to kind of try and encourage my clients to do some energy medicine work. I encourage my teachers to have grounding practices between sessions so that they just ground their energy before they go into the next one, and they don't inadvertently bring something from one session into another. Because once you start to see this bigger piece, you can't unsee it.
No, you can't. And I remember I felt, it's so beautiful that you teach that about burnout, because that was something that I really had really struggled with. When you're someone that loves doing things and saying yes to things. And yeah, in the past, I didn't have that discernment of, actually, Rach, you're cyclical, just take a little bit of time out, say no to things. So it's what an amazing thing to be taught that so early on in their teacher training. But you're right, who you are is what you teach, and your energy is what you, and I think a lot of the time people come to class because of your energy, not just because of, you're doing a spine curl, you're doing some curl ups. Those things are fabulous, but I think it is that download and transmission of your energy and your insights that's, at least it's going to keep people coming to you. Once they've kind of fallen in love with that part of you, I think that's what keeps people coming.
I talk about that all the time as a studio owner. You can have the very best technical teachers who don't fill up classes, and you can have teachers maybe who have some technical, knowledge to learn, but they seem to be able to bring an experience, and that's the energy of it. And if you can put both together, you're really onto a winner. If you've got the depth of knowledge, but you also understand we're far more complex beings than just bones and tissue. There's so much more to it. And this is just really fresh in my mind because I had a weekend of a whole, 2 days of talking about it with our trainee teachers. And in the training, we do like a drumming sound bath and we do some Reiki. And, we kind of get people to try and actually experience this. Some people on the courses have done this kind of work, they're kind of used to it. But those who haven't are like, okay, wow, I'm kind of listening to you now when you say this. Even just sound, how sound can make people feel.
Oh, absolutely. I love that you do all of that, Nic. It's so wonderful, and I know your business, Soul Pilates, about the soul of it. And I think that's really wonderful because
I think people, the amount of times I say to people, it is called soul for a reason. And then they're like, when they start to understand it, they're like, oh yeah, I kind of understand now. It's kind of got, there's deeper meaning in the name. I'm interested to talk to you. When I first got to know you, you were teaching, you had like an in-person studio, and then COVID happened, if I remember rightly, and you pivoted online. Is that kind of how it happened?
kind of, I was actually already online beforehand. I'd run a couple of 10-week programs online, which were called Your Dream Body. And not in the sense of, look at this beautiful toned body, but more of, what you are, what you think, you are what you feel, you are what you dream. So yeah, I ran a couple of 10-week courses of that. And then I put together a library online of classes, and I had a few people doing this almost like a membership. It was just very casual, but they were doing a membership of all of these classes. And I think, if I remember rightly, I think I was teaching once a week on Zoom. Anyway, COVID happened, and I'd had a studio, and I had a studio for 7 years, which was wonderful. I actually closed the studio before COVID. It was just a decision because I'd had the two girls, and actually it just felt right. It just felt, I just want to hire a space instead of having all of that headspace where I'm doing all of that. I had teachers. It just felt like the moment. So I'd closed the studio, but I was hiring a beautiful space. And then obviously COVID happened, and it was a lot to move everyone online. I mean, I know you had the same thing. To move everyone online was a lot. I had a couple of administrators working with me, and they would just, call up my 70-year-old, 80-year-old clients. They would literally get them all on Zoom. I'm not going to be able to do this. And, we managed to get about 300 people on Zoom for various classes. And then that, it worked beautifully. So that was really where Aligned was born. So now we have an app, which is great. We have an on-demand membership, and we have a live membership, and we have classes 5 days a week, which I absolutely love. And it's such a beautiful community. I mean, there's people that I have never met that I feel like I really know, who are all over the world, and they know each other. They've made friends with each other, and we do retreats once or twice a year. And, it's lovely for them to get together there. But yeah, I suppose that's really how Aligned was able to flourish.
In the world of COVID, when everyone went online, and then some people, and like you, really kind of found you just did it so well. But at that time, I think there was a real push, and there still is a real push. I mean, there is in our industry generally around, like you said, the aesthetics and the sort of beast yourself, push yourself more. I feel like, and why I wanted you, not only because I love you as a person, but why I also wanted you on the podcast is what you've done so well, and I think it's really difficult to do, there's not many people doing it, is you've brought this world of wellness, movement, the stuff we've just been talking about, you've brought it to life online. How did you go about even thinking about that? Because there's not really anyone doing it as well as you. That's the truth. And you've created a real community who didn't, I'm sure some people might have gone back in person, but I feel like you were one of the only people who really kept that up. Post-COVID, it's still a huge and thriving community. How did you go about crafting that, Rach?
Oh, thank you. I don't know. It's not always strategy with me. I really just have to follow my heart. And if my heart is telling me to do something, I just go for it. But then I go all in. So I don't just dabble in anything. If I've got a pull, right, I'm jumping in, I'm doing all the courses. I did really invest. I've done lots of business courses over the year, and I wouldn't say I'm the best businesswoman, but I think it's not just about the strategy that I've learned, which I would say there is a bit of strategy, but it's more about the people that I surround myself with. And I know I don't see you very often, but you are in that network of people that are on your radar, that have got that energy and that have got that drive and that just keep going. I mean, I remember with you with COVID, it being a real challenge. I've just opened this studio.
7-week-old baby, new studio, and 2 days later we closed. It was hard. And for me, I felt like I wasn't in a place to be able to pivot online straight away. I knew I'd get the studio open with a newborn baby, and then I was like, right, then I'm off. And of course, what happened, COVID then happened. So we didn't really get our studio online until later on in that year, in the October. And I do think it was people like you who, and it's interesting, I hadn't realized you'd already kind of done some of that work. Not to say it still wasn't a big learning curve, I'm sure it was, but I imagine that had really helped. And you were confident with it. So when people were ringing up saying you can do this, you weren't trying to also go, well, I don't know how to do it either.
I'd been doing webinars online when people were laughing at me, like, what is a webinar? It must have been, well, it's definitely more than 10 years, probably 15 years ago, maybe not quite as long as that. But Laura, that's how I would connect with Laura. I do so many courses online. She was in New York. So I would just be doing that twice a week. So I was kind of used to Zoom and how she would upload things. So I was very familiar with all of that. So it did feel like a blessing. It was a big learning curve, but actually I was quite confident with presenting online, really teaching online, uploading everything. Yeah. So I was quite blessed. I felt quite fortunate with that. And also I just don't give up very easily. If I've said that I'm going to do something, whether it's out loud or in my heart, it takes a lot for me to not do it.
How did you go about then not just putting like Pilates classes on there? Because you didn't. You also did some of the like mindset stuff from the Franklin method. And how did you find a community that resonated with that?
I had a Facebook, well, I still have a Facebook group. It's not so active now. And I think this is the thing with business and online business, especially. It's always evolving, isn't it? You do have to keep your finger on the pulse. So at the time when I was kind of growing my online studio, I mean, in the moment, I suppose I'm not really in a space of growing it. I think it's kind of a static in a way, but it's lovely how it is at the moment. But if I were to grow it, but back in that time, I was really involved in this Facebook group. I would run lots of free challenges and I'd get, 500 people, 1,000 people sign up for all of these free challenges. And then I would take them on a journey through the challenge and then invite them to come and join us. And that's still the same. I ran it wasn't a challenge. I offered a free class a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, you get your percentage of people that sign up. And then you get, most of them that come for the free thing don't. But that's okay because they might not sign up now. I've had a few people lately saying, I've been following you for years, 7 years, and now I'm coming to class, or now I'm signing up for the pelvic floor plan or whatever it is. If you're in it for the long haul, it doesn't matter. If you're only in it for the short term, I think it can be a little bit frustrating. But you must feel the same as a business owner. That it ebbs and flows, doesn't it?
It does. My Soul at Home platform now, it doesn't really grow outside of our studio. There's a few people who sign up, but actually it's a really lovely support. Our members love it. So our members get free access to it. And I'm really happy about that because I was so proud of the content we put on there. And it's been really nice that now an audience gets to share it. So, some of my friends who don't live locally, they're on it. And some clients who move away will go on it. But obviously a lot of our clients go on it. And it's like you said, it is interesting, isn't it? These things ebb and flow, but it's nice. You saw them sometimes see content coming back to life for a second or third outing, which is really nice.
And I think this is the other thing as a teacher, when you've been teaching for so many years, you just have to be flexible with it, don't you? I actually, at the time when I was just doing the online, I thought, I don't know that I'm ever going to go back in person. And I think that was perhaps a bit of burnout. I had the 2 children, I was just probably doing too much. And I was like, this is lovely. I can mute people. I can just exit the room. And then actually you start to think, what, I'm actually really missing seeing people in person. And now I'm able to go back. I teach 5 in-person classes a week, perhaps a half day or full day retreat every month. And I absolutely love it because I'm doing the both, it feels really nice. But I think what I'm trying to say is you've got to be flexible with it and you've got to see over time what's working and what isn't and what works for a period and then what shifts. Yeah. And just a sense into that.
Do you have any tips for anyone who might be thinking about growing their own online presence?
I think really the tips is just to be yourself. To find, niche is probably a really cheesy word, but just to really find what your flavor is. And then you'll find the people that really resonate with that. And I think that's perhaps what I've done with the people that I've got. They really like that mixture. And the people that have come to me and think, I don't care about my scapula, they will not come to me. Or I don't care about, opening my heart chakra at the end of a class. They won't come to me. But the people that love it, they continue to come. So I think, probably it's being true to you, being consistent with everything, consistent with your offerings, not being disheartened when some things fall flat, because I think that still happens to all of us. You'll put something out, you think, I thought that would have flown off. I taught a retreat this weekend and with a friend of mine, there was only 5 sign-ups. And we're like, this is absolutely bonkers. It was the most beautiful morning, and we thought it would have resonated with so many people. We had 5 people. So I think it's that, isn't it? It's you see online everybody, it looks like everyone's doing fabulous all the time, but it's just knowing that within business there's all those ebbs and flows. And I would say probably the last thing is the thing that I do pride myself in is just really caring about my students, and I know that's a little bit trickier online just because of the nature of it, but I still check in with everyone at the beginning of class. How are you? And sometimes I think, oh, perhaps I shouldn't because I've got a wrist issue and this, that, da, 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 da. I'm thinking, oh, how are we going to move? How are we going to move today? But I think that's lovely, isn't it? They feel safe with me. They feel cared for.
I was going to ask you that. How do you maintain that care and connection online? I guess it's to still do some live sessions and it not just be all on demand. Does that feel important to you?
We do 5 days a week live classes. So I teach 4 days a week online. And then my mum teaches a couple of classes. My sister teaches a yoga and facial reflexology class. So yeah, I think the live part is gorgeous for the community. And then really offering one-to-one. So if somebody wants to, last week I had someone say, oh, I've got this going on. I think, this is actually a little bit beyond the capacity of just 3 minutes at the beginning of class. We need to check in on it one-to-one. So it's having all of those different offers available, isn't it? That you can come and see me in person, or you can see me live online, see me for a one-to-one. It's being able to offer all of those things.
It's interesting to hear actually how your in-person Zoom classes have continued when I think so many went. I think that's a real testament to the fact, I guess, you'd built a community. It wasn't like it was just your local community who couldn't come to studio during COVID. And then as soon as the studios were open, you'd built a community, like you said, far and wide, who bought into this bigger ethos piece that you so beautifully bring to life. I always joke when we're looking at some of our teacher trainings, I'm like, who doesn't want to feel amazing? Isn't that all we want to do with people? That's all they want. If they feel amazing, they're going to come back. And I think you do that so well and bringing it to life in the way you do. But I love hearing how actually you've still got that community who wants to turn up online, and that allows you to then check in with them and foster a real community that knows each other somewhat.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I just love that we're all over the planet. When we're sitting there, if we're doing a meditation at the end and perhaps imagining the roots coming out of our feet, I'm like, gosh, we've got people all over isn't that just incredible? It feels so beautiful that you've got this mycelial network of beautiful aligned students that are all connecting in that moment. It feels really magic. And, as you know, I'm in North Devon, which I love, but I've always had to have that reach. I always studied in New York or Colorado or, various places. I couldn't just be stuck here. And I think having the online community really helps me with that sense of, I am connected to the rest of the world.
What I'm hearing from you is you really have learned to tune in to what works for you. You get to live in a place that you get to be by the sea and have everything that gives you. I grew up by the sea. I'm always think I need to do your move. But like you said, you still get to have that community worldwide. One of the joyful things about being your own boss, isn't it, is that sometimes it is tough that the buck stops with you. But it also means that you can pivot on a sixpence whenever you want to. You're not, confined by somebody else's needs. And so you can allow yourself, like you said, there was a time where you just wanted to be online. And there was a time now where you're like, I will do some in person, I'll do some retreats. For that to come from you, your needs, and therefore your community can kind of feed off that.
And that's something that I think I really learned through Laura, actually. I think before, when I had my studio, I couldn't say no. It was a very strange thing in my body that if ever I had a waiting list, I was like, I have to set up a new class. I just couldn't let someone just sit there on the waiting list. And I got shingles in the end. I was totally burnt out. Now I could not imagine going back. I couldn't hold that anymore. I would just absolutely frazzle. And I think I feel that I can only teach my best, truly. I can only get the insights coming through for a really beautiful on-point class when I'm in my rhythm and when I've had a rest, and also when I've been busy enough. It's not just about not just resting all the time. It's having momentum when you need it and being in those passion projects. But it doesn't feel hard when you love it, does it? I've just done my first podcast. I've got my second one tomorrow, as in, I know we both started this at the same time. And this feels like a gorgeous passion project that I get to, like you, introduce or interview people that, I don't know, that you've got questions that you want to ask them, and there's things that you really want to learn from them. And what I'm loving is, so my first podcast was all about water, and it was with a scientist, and we were talking about the energy of water. And I just love how that feeds straight back into work. I mean, we are water. And exactly what you were saying earlier with the sound and the vibrations.
I listened to that podcast. It's great. People go and listen to it. She's from the northwest of Ireland. I'm off to the west coast. I'm from the west coast of Ireland. I always say to people I have lost my accent, but I'm going on Saturday. And I was literally about 5 or 6 minutes into the episode, and she was talking about being in Donegal and surfing with her kids. And I literally paused the podcast and messaged my mum and was like, Mum, you need to book a surf lessons on Sunday for me and the children and my niece. And and I just thought, isn't that lovely? Isn't it lovely that, I know you, that's made me listen to this. And I was, listening to the power of water. And it's just, I feel really blessed in this world through Pilates. That's kind of what started it for me. The people that I've got to meet and what they've taught me and what they've inspired, and even down, like you said, to your past podcast. What inspired you to create that podcast?
I mean, just it's bonkers, really. It's, I know you've got a background in broadcasting. I do not at all. So but this is another example of, like, I get a bit of an intuitive hit, and then I keep hearing it. And I think it's another thing. I live in North Devon, and unless I foster these connections, they don't just happen. And it feels like this is a beautiful way to foster these connections. Like, you and I now have had this gorgeous conversation. You've been in my awareness for the last, you are often, but even more so for the last month as we've been talking about this. And I just think that's lovely. It feels like it's a really lovely way to have an intentional conversation and to build another connection with someone that actually you may not have spoken to for 6 years, or you may not again for another 6 years. But it's a moment in time where you can come together with someone that, inspires you, or you want to build that connection with. I think that's really the heart of it. And what I'm loving is that the people that I've lined up, I'm only going to do one a month. And I just thought, this is going to be my study in a way. So this whole month for me has been about water in my teachings. And I've got a nervous system coach and healer coming on tomorrow. So that will be the next whole month, diving more into the world of the nervous system. And I just think, how fun is that I can choose these incredible people or invite them to come on. And if they do, then I get to learn from them and be in their world for a month and just keep allowing those insights to kind of keep pouring in and percolating through my teaching.
Well, it's blown me away as well that the people, you kind of have this wish list of people and then they say yes. And then you think, well, I can have all these conversations that I've thought of having, which is really great. I'd love to take you on to creating your ultimate pelvic floor plan. How did that come about for you?
So when I had my second daughter, Orla, a lovely Irish name, she is gorgeous. They're both gorgeous. I had a prolapse. I had a rectocele prolapse. I actually think I had it after Seren, but I didn't go and get it checked out, which is ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, isn't it, in hindsight? But you're busy. It's embarrassing. You don't get it checked out. But anyway, after the birth of all, I thought, oh gosh, something really doesn't feel right. I need to go to the doctors. So I did. And I was diagnosed with a rectocele prolapse. And it felt like, felt horrendous, because how can that be possible? I was a ballet dancer. I'd done lots of Pilates through my pregnancies. I'd had a natural labour, hypnobirthing, and it just felt like it was something that I couldn't control that had happened. And in that moment, I felt like, I don't know what to do. I don't know if you've ever had that, but where, you can give advice to other people, but suddenly I just didn't know what to do in that moment. I just felt really lost. So I had my moment of feeling lost. I went to see some pelvic health physios in London, the Mummy MOT ladies, went to see Maria Elliott, who was fabulous. And it felt like her energy gave me a real boost of like, of course you know what to do. And she helped to direct me. And I thought, well, of course I know what to do. I'm going to put together, I think I did a 6-week program a few times live online. And they went really, really well. I would kind of mix and blend Franklin method, Pilates, energetics. It was really in depth. We'd do almost like an anatomy lesson, and then we'd do the embodied anatomy and put the exercises together. And then it really became a plan. So I ran that a few times live. And then I thought, actually, wouldn't it be fabulous to have an evergreen that people could continue to have access to forever? So I went about doing that. I planned it a 4-week course, 5 sessions a day for 4 weeks. And we look at everything from the urogenital triangle, the sphincters, the psoas, the jaw, the diaphragm, all of these different pieces. And then so it's a 4-week course, and then I've put together some playlists. So if you have a hypertonic pelvic floor, you've got a playlist of 5 classes you can do on repeat. Or if you have bladder incontinence, these would be your 5 classes that you do on repeat once you finish the course. And it's been fabulous. And I've had hundreds of people go through the course, and it's an evergreen. So I've got somebody in Ireland at the moment who's recently signed up, and she's like, Rachel, I can't tell you the difference that it's making. She's doing something every day because they're shorter classes. Yeah, it's just really incredible. I think that women can then really and we have to take it into our own hands. No one can fix it for us. It is something we have to do consistently.
Is your approach sort of a bit different to maybe some of the sort of clinical and traditional pelvic floor, squeeze routes that are out there? It sounds like it is.
I would think so. I think with all of the Franklin method work and embodied biomechanics that I've done, we do have a couple of instances where we might just do the sphincter contractions, and we isolate them: anal sphincter, vaginal sphincters and canal, and then urethral sphincters. But it's much more with embodied movement. So eccentric lengthening and loading of pelvic floor in, for example, maybe a squat, if that's suitable, concentric contraction, but then also looking at the surrounding structures. And it's about getting to know your body again over time, isn't it? And if you're thinking, gosh, my diaphragm is tight, I wouldn't have imagined that a tight diaphragm would affect the pelvic floor. But clearly, throughout the course, you start to understand that it does. So I feel like it's quite it's a comprehensive course, but it's a really holistic course. So we look at stress, we look at how you're breathing, we look at your posture, and then it obviously has the exercise aspects to it as well. I love it. And I try to do a pelvic floor workshop once a month as well. So next Thursday, I have one called Relaxing the Core, Softening the Core, I think it's called, A Journey to Pelvic Floor Relaxation. Last month, we did one looking at building strength within the pelvic floor, even though you've had a prolapse. And that's what I love about it. When you're in love with a topic, there is just so much more to learn. I've been teaching about the pelvic floor for years, but it's like, gosh, okay, the vagus nerve in the pelvic floor, or, the jaw in the pelvic floor, the feet in the pelvic floor.
And it's so important that we are teaching it in this full-bodied way. The dysfunction that has arrived in the pelvic floor area isn't necessarily a pelvic floor issue. It could be, but it could be, like you said, from the feet, from the diaphragm, or from, a whole system that then struggled with the demands on it in pregnancy and in labor. And it is really interesting to talk to people like yourself who, had done everything, like, in inverted commas, right. You couldn't have been more fit and more in touch with your body, and yet still these things happen. And I think it's important for people to know that. I know in my studio, people can feel like their body has failed them, and they get left with these injuries for years. And the medical profession in particular can have a bit of a short-sighted view on, you've got a pelvic organ prolapse, it's a pelvic organ prolapse problem. And so movement is really the key to get people into their bodies, trusting their bodies again, feeling confident with them, and also starting to feel imbalances elsewhere, which not only helps the pelvic issue, but often maybe their bad back that they had, or their neck, or, knee pain and things like that.
I often say that at the beginning of my pelvic floor courses. And I do have a bit of that personality where I like to see the light in most situations. But actually, I think you have to see these things as a journey. And yes, it's really annoying to have. I didn't want to have a pelvic organ prolapse, but actually look at this whole path that it's opened up for me, not just in my career, but actually now I'm diving into the world of shamanic healing, womb healing, tuning fork. I didn't expect that I'd go down that route, and I wouldn't have done had I not had the pelvic organ prolapse. So I think it's always an invitation to start to know yourself more. I didn't really realize the effects of being chronically constipated. It's like, oh, well, of course, you're going to have that's going to have a huge effect on the pelvic floor, as well as other things. Yeah, and I think actually, if we can all start to take this absolute holistic look at ourselves, I mean, what a different world it would be in if we all understood our own nervous system and our bodies, and when we were in balance and out of balance. And this week I've been feeling so tired in the morning, and I've been feeling so fabulous for the last few weeks. I'm like, well, of course you are, because it's that in your cycle, Rachel, and that's great, and just go with it. Yeah, I think if we were in a world where we could understand that, more of us could understand that we were cyclical and we didn't always have to be producing and productive and working so hard all the time, that we could drop into rest and then go into those moments of kind of more expansion and more energy. It would be just a very different world. Our health would be different.
We're not taught this though, are we? We're not taught this. I'm a bit of a bugger. I think you are too, for being like, right, what is the lesson this is trying to teach me? I like everything to be a lesson, and then I like to spin it into a positive. You've got 2 girls. How old are your children now? And do you try and bring this up with them? Because I do with mine, because I was many years old when, I was able to maybe understand where burnout was coming from.
So I have a 6-year-old and a nearly 10-year-old.
Wow.
I know, 2 gorgeous girls. And we talk about a lot of things. We talk about a lot of physical things. We're talking about puberty at the moment because Seren's studying that at school. So that's really interesting. And to do that in just a really open environment. I mean, they come into my studio and they see, Mummy, where is the uterus again? And where is the rectum? And, so they know all of the anatomy. Seren had a situation recently where she spoke her mind about something in front of a friend. And my initial reaction was like, you can't say that. I didn't say that, but that would have been my initial. And I actually thought, that's amazing that you were able to speak your truth in that moment. So I wouldn't say I've nailed it, but I'm very much in that, just trying to breathe and notice the situation and give them the space to listen to their bodies. I mean, my husband and I are still, we haven't nailed it. Definitely, often when the girls are burnt out, we think, oh gosh, what do we do? They're committed to go to surf lifesaving. Should we just push them to go? Or is this their body telling them? So we haven't nailed it, but I'm definitely in that conversation around, okay, what is commitment versus not listening to your body, And I want them to learn that at a young age.
And you do your best, don't you? I mean, no one nails it, do they? Let's be honest. We're all just doing our best. But you try your best, I think, to at least get them to be part of this world. I know you do. I've seen your videos of your kids doing like moon ceremonies and, just getting them to, I don't know, just be more in touch with. It goes back to what we said earlier, the energy of the universe, and just kind of feeling in, I think, to nature. I mean, even just bringing them to the beach. There's nothing more grounding to me than putting my feet in the Atlantic Ocean. That's just my thing. It always has been. And I think it's just getting them to do that. But of course, I've talked to a few people on this podcast, even as wellness people, we're still not immune to burnout. We might preach this stuff. We might know what we're teaching people, but it doesn't mean that we're not immune to it. We make mistakes too, and we do our best with the kids. Do you have a different discipline, Rachael, now with kind of efforts versus your ballet professional days?
Yes, absolutely. And I know you are the same, as in you teach efficiency. That is, the embodiment of efficiency is something that you weave into how you teach too. But that's really important for me, to be able to discern in your own body, okay, what is me pushing myself in a healthy way and getting stronger versus using way too much tension for any given situation. So it's not that you could just, run a marathon and put no effort in. There needs to be an adequate amount of effort, but what is too much, and how can I find that sweet spot? So yeah, definitely that's something that I weave into all of my classes, is about how can I still give them a workout, but they haven't. I remember coming away from a lot of Pilates workouts and actually having the shakes and feeling my nervous system just feels really jarred. And I do feel more toned, but I also feel more stressed. So with my workouts, I try to support people to go away. They have a little bit of DOMS the next day. They know they've worked out, but equally they come away never more relaxed. So it's, it's the polarity of both in a way. And I think because it's always front of mind with how I teach, my body will tell me, you're not supposed to be doing this. Or, with something like the podcast, when something is new, or if you're putting together a training or putting together a workshop, there's a certain amount of effort and work that needs to go into it. But I know that wouldn't be sustainable if I was doing that every single week. So yes, I think I do have that discernment now in my own life of, I love a bit of pressure. I love to expand. I love to grow. And I know that I can't just keep growing all the time, because I will just blow my own fuses.
That's my challenge too. I always think I am at my best when I'm on my edges, but on your edges is where you burn out if you stay there too long. I just love new things. And like you, I go all in, and, I can't do a podcast without being like, right, well, I need the lights, and I need the studio, and I need and I need to watch all these learning, I'm like really trying to learn and hone my craft. So I get it. And I do that about everything, but I guess it's just about coming home, isn't it? Coming back to center, having practices. I was away on a Reiki retreat a couple of weeks ago, and we used to start the morning with a shamanic song, actually. And I realized I'm just singing the song every morning, and I think it's just anchoring me back to that place. It just takes a couple of minutes. I'm a big believer in like micro practices. Who's got time to meditate for an hour? Okay, we all should do it, but we can find little micro practices that we can easily fit into our day. I always joke, you can have mindfulness when you're washing up. You just need to think about the wash up and not anything else. You can have these practices in real life just to kind of bring you back so that you can, like you said, and I'm guilty of this too. I can burn out. And then if you're trying to teach and inspire from that place, the energy's off whack. What do you think, Rachael, is misunderstood about well-being in the movement world? Whether it's dance or Pilates, do you see some kind of misunderstandings there?
Something that was kind of just dropping in for me was it was a little bit also related to what you were just saying around wanting to do things really well and diving all in. Something that I am getting much better at is being able to drop into my body through all of these techniques over the years, but to drop almost into the stillness and that capacity of that present moment, and to realize, oh gosh, perhaps I don't need to over prepare. Perhaps I don't need to overthink and do everything perfectly. And maybe that's in answer to that question of the thing about the wellness world is that it's great that it's more fashionable, but then some people might feel that they have to have this gorgeous outfit to do it, or this higher dose mat, which I love my higher dose mat, but you don't need it. You do not need any of the things. Those things are lovely to have too. But I think the main thing is actually you don't need anything. You just need you, and you need to have the tools to be able to drop into you and remember that you're perfect. You're perfect as not perfect as you are, but everything you need is there. You don't need the things to become any more well or any more healthy. It's all about what's already there. I know with my podcast, I've done that a little bit differently to you, because I thought, I'm not going to listen to other people's podcasts at the moment, because I will freak myself out, because I know if I start to overthink something, that's not good for me. So what I'm doing is actually, I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but I'm not listening to other people. I'm just going to tune in. I'm just tuning in to what needs to come through in that moment. And I think that's why I'm doing them a month apart, actually. I'm just going to tune into what needs to come and develop that trust. And I think that's something that I'm really wanting to develop more of, not looking outside and comparing, because that freaks me out. Just, no, I have it all. I have it all. And this is my flavor. And if my flavor isn't what somebody else wants, that's fine. But this is my flavor. And the people that need to find me will find me.
And we have a closing tradition on the podcast, Rachael, just some questions that we've asked everybody. The first one is, what was the most influential piece of advice you've been given, and by who?
Yes. So it's funny, I don't seem to remember verbal advice. It's something that doesn't land. So I think it's not advice that I want to talk about. It's more people that are living, that walking the talk, that are living, they're a living embodiment of following their passion. So I don't ever really remember anyone saying, follow your passion. But when you see people being lit up inside and following their passion, I kind of take that as advice,
Yeah. What mentors have shaped your life?
What mentors have shaped my life? Definitely my lovely friend Bruce in Australia, Eric Franklin for the time that I was working with him, Laura Hames Franklin, and actually all of the people that I met through the world of working with Laura. All of these lovely friends that I have all around the world. I feel like we're a bit of a constellation, and we kind of bounce off of each other. And, people like Iski, and it's a lot of people really, not so much mentors, but just these energetic beings that I feel, gosh, you're amazing. I want to vibrate at your frequency,
Yeah, for sure. And if you could go back in time and give your younger self some advice, what would that be?
The younger self advice would be, just don't overthink things. Really trust your instinct. Don't overthink things. Trust your instinct, and just be happy to be on the journey. When things aren't, it's like with the podcast, isn't it? When things aren't perfect at first, that's all right. It's fine. You've got to start somewhere. You're learning. You're better than you know. And just trust. Don't overthink it.
It's like my husband said to me, go back and listen to some of the biggest podcasts out there in their first couple of episodes, more than couple. Like, they're not, the biggest YouTubers, if you went back and looked at the first class that you taught as a newly qualified instructor, completely different to today. And of course it will be, you know, so it's the same, isn't it? It's a conversation I actually had with some of our teacher trainees recently, is you don't come out with your certificate as like this perfect teacher. That's when the work starts. It's when the learning starts. I interviewed Diane Nye on the podcast, who's an educator for Polestar. And I've shared this advice so many times because I think it's just great. She was like, you need about 10 years before you can say that you're an experienced teacher. I think that's great. It gives people a bit of grace, doesn't it? To be like, it's okay that I'm still figuring this out and not thinking, because I think you're absolutely right. When we overthink it, we get caught up energetically, we get stuck as well then, don't we? Because there's too much of a performance level. And as soon as you then have any of that self-negative talk, well, then energetically you're putting yourself in the place you don't need to be. So you just got to go and do your best.
Yeah, just be on the journey. You know, as we're doing more trainings, it's great to still be learning something new. I think you feel vulnerable when you feel like you're not smashing. You know we can go and teach a class now, and we can teach a beautiful class if we're feeling on form. You know, hosting our podcast, it's still, I mean, you've done more than I have, but it's still like, oh my goodness, it's new. But actually, when you look back on the journey, that's such a fun part of the journey, isn't it? That the vulnerability and the newness, it feels really sticky at the time, but it's great, isn't it? It means that you're expanding, and just go with it, and you just stop trying to be perfect.
I'm so glad you said that, actually, because what popped into my mind is you're so right, because I can then struggle with when I really have achieved it. You know, I'm like, oh, here I am. I've got the 3 studios, they're booming. I've got the, and I can really struggle at that place and be like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do now. I'm not hustling. Like, because you're right, there's something really beautiful about that. So just give ourselves some space. And, you know, whether it's me and you going into the world of podcasting, or newly qualified teachers, or you've just opened a studio, or whatever is new, it's okay that you come away and go, I could have done that better. Because actually that's where the fun is, because you can really keep adjusting there. And what's been the most profound gift from Pilates, Rach?
I think it's been giving me this life that I have, you know, giving me a blueprint for a different life, that I'm not a slave to working for someone else for my whole life, or I'm not a slave to having a job that I don't absolutely adore. It's given me the gift of flexibility, of being able to travel, being able to work around my children, to meet the most amazing people, and then just to be able to keep exploring this world of movement and energetics, and that I can weave it in. You know, it's a huge gift. So grateful. I mean, did Joseph Pilates know that he would be, you know, imparting this in so many millions of people's lives?
I think since I've been doing these interviews, that is a question that has come up for me, because I do hear these, you know, profound changes in people's lives from the world of Pilates, and from, you know, often an experience of going into a class thinking it's one thing, but coming across a teacher who really made them slow down, who helped them embody movement, they get more in touch with themselves. But of course, then I'm brought back to the fact that actually Pilates is a real principle. You know, there was a whole ethos and a principle that I think is a little bit missing in some places, for sure. But it is, you know, I do think that, I mean, you know, what would he be doing if he was still around today? We'd have lots more equipment, that's for sure. Rachael, if anyone wants to work with you, how can they go about doing that?
Well, so they can find me online, www.rachhall.com. They can come and join my on-demand or my premium membership and join the live classes, Ultimate Pelvic Floor Plan. And over time, there's lots of other small containers that I run online. Wise Womb, I'm working on something to do with connecting to and following your heart at the moment. So a lot more of these embodiment practices. And then I do retreats. So I do an annual retreat in the Cotswolds, and I do half day and full day retreats, you know, all over really, mostly around the southwest. Yeah, but you can probably find all of it on my website, and I hope you do. It'd be lovely to work with you.
Rachael, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Long time coming. We finally managed to have this chat. So it's been lovely. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. An absolute pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. I'm really grateful that you're here, and I'm loving building this community with you all. Make sure you click the follow button so you don't miss an episode. New ones come out every Monday. And if you found today's content helpful, it would mean a lot if you left a 5-star review, or even better, shared it with someone you think would enjoy it too. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next week.